Time for it. You think, man, we gotta get a couple seconds.
Come on. Come on. Come on. Catch up with you.
Good, John?
I'm all good to go.
David? Everybody okay? White balance done? Audio is fine. Good morning. I'm Rob Tafano with the Public Affairs Office with the Charlotte and Mecklenburg Police Department. I believe this is round 6 for us with our Wednesday briefings here. Just a couple of moments of introduce Captain Cecil Brisbane. A lot of you know him from investigations. He's over homicide. He's going to talk about the 22 homicides that we reported that we're investigating so far this year. Give you a little bit of context concerning those homicides. Talk a lot about victimization, what these situations a lot of them involve, and more importantly, what we're doing and what the community can do to resolve these, and what we're working to do to prevent the next crime. When he's through, we have Lieutenant Celestine Ratliff. I'm going to bring her up to talk a little bit about our juvenile diversion program and the success that we've had with that since 2013. She's going to throw some very revealing numbers out when it comes to juvenile diversion and how it's making a big impact on some of the younger, more vulnerable people in our community. When they're through, we'll go ahead, we'll open it up to questions and do our best to get those questions answered. So without further delay, Captain Cecil Brisbane.
Morning. No, we're a little later than usual. Appreciate you guys all coming out. What I want to start off with is by talking about the 22 homicides we've had so far this year. That's an increase over this time last year, quite frankly, the previous few years. But I want to really talk about the numbers. First of all, we all know that one homicide is one too many, and there are families out there that are looking for answers, trying to figure out what caused the death of their loved one. In that regard, we've cleared 15 of these cases so far this year. Our victims, though, 16 have been African American, 3 have been white, and 3 have been Latino. 12 of our suspects have been arrested that were black, 4 Latino, and 2 white or Caucasian. The age range for our victims, we've had 2 victims that were children under the age of 17. And when it comes to the actual type of weapon used in these homicides, we've had 14 homicides that involved a handgun, 5 involved knives, and 2 involved some other type of physical force. The circumstances around these homicides, several of them are still under investigation, but what we can tell you is what the background was for at least 17 of these cases. 2 of these cases involved robberies, 3 were just drug-related, another 6 were domestic, but quite frankly, the most alarming one is the 8 that appear to be the cause of some type of disagreement. And that's something we talked about quite frequently over the last few weeks. A lot of these offenses seem to be escalating for no reason. People are not working to resolve their problems without resorting to gun violence. They're not taking the opportunities to de-escalate. They're getting ramped up and then pulling out a gun. And we talked about this before. Pulling out a gun is fine. You can't come back from that. One of the things that we really want to talk about is the fact that a lot of our victims and suspects have been known to each other. So there isn't randomness to these crimes where people in the general public have to be worried about some individual who's going out and just randomly selecting somebody to assault. These are individuals that have a history with each other and that have had some disagreements and have never been able to solve those disagreements, and it's escalated into gun violence. The things that we're seeing that are helping us, though, is the response that we've been getting from the community. We've had several tips that have led us to successful arrests in these cases, and working with the DA's office, we hope to prosecute these individuals successfully as we continue on throughout the course of this year. But it's the information that we're receiving from the public that we're really happy about. We're getting tips that are helping us to speed up or expedite these investigations and hold the people responsible for them and charge them appropriately. One of the things that is working with that is the citizens actually being more involved with police officers. We've got a number of things going on throughout the department that are community engagement in nature, where officers are getting out of their cars and talking to citizens, about the things that are going on in their community. And I think that's really helping us to get community members to have a level of comfort where they feel that they can trust the police and have a dialogue with us. And that dialogue is in turn helping us with arresting some of these violent offenders. We've also talked about Operation Ambulance and some of the other things that we're doing on the crime fighting nature that have helped us be successful over the last few weeks in reducing the amount of gun violence in some of these neighborhoods. The biggest thing that we keep talking about, though, when it comes to our opens, is the amount of money available for tips. So generally, there's $5,000 available through Crime Stoppers to help us successfully locate an individual responsible for a crime. And that tip is just that. It's a tip. You don't have to give your name. You don't have to give anything other than the information that you have on that case. We've had a few cases this year where that money has been increased. We have one case, the Anthony Frazier case that we talk about all the time, where that tip is now, or that money available for a tip is now up to $20,000.
What we're going to do is we're going to break from tradition a little bit today, and we're going to bring Lieutenant Ratcliffe up, and we'll save all of our questions for the end of the briefing, and this way we'll just knock everything out in one fell swoop, if that's all the same with you guys. Lieutenant Celestine Ratcliffe, again, she's going to talk this morning about our juvenile diversion program, discuss those numbers, but more importantly, independent of those numbers, they go a lot deeper than just statistics. They affect people, and she wants to talk a little bit about those stories now. Lieutenant Celestine Ratcliffe.
Good morning. I'd like to address everyone about our youth diversion program. The program was started in 2013. Since the inception of the program, we've had over 2,800 students to come through, youth to come through the juvenile diversion program. Of that number, about 80% of them have successfully completed the program, and we currently have about a 10% recidivism rate. The purpose of the program was to address the disproportionate minority contact, where we saw a large percentage of minority youth who were being introduced into the criminal justice system at an early age. And the juvenile diversion program helps us to give them positive initial contact with police officers rather than having a negative initial contact with police. We also try to address and interrupt the school to prison pipeline, which 60% of our diversion referrals have come from school resource officers who are assigned to the schools that these youth are coming from. Of our 16 and 17-year-old youth, about 90% of them have completed. Knowing that the age of juveniles may be moving up very soon, Juvenile Diversion Unit is already addressing that by engaging students from the age of 6 all the way up to 17. The programs that we offer for them are programs that have life skills, but then also are infused with conflict resolution, substance abuse, academic achievement, and prevention. Our prevention is for our younger youth who are between the ages of 6 and 11, because at that age their attention span is very small. But they do small things such as show and tell. They might bring a knife to school, a pocket knife to school because they had it at home, and maybe they made a bet with someone, or they took a dare that they would bring to school. So we find that they find themselves having contact with the officer. So we do a prevention for them to help them to make better choices. We do have some success stories from our kids that have come through our diversion. Many of them have moved on to college because they understand that if they have an opportunity to have a juvenile arrest and a juvenile diversion in lieu of an arrest, then that will help them whenever they're filling out college applications and also filling out applications for gainful employment. So that is one of the benefits of the program, is to give the student a second chance for first-time nonviolent misdemeanor offenses. Currently, we are expanding our program into our outlying counties. We've started with Huntersville because they had the largest amount of school-age youth who could benefit from the diversion program. And we also included Matthews, and now we're expanding into Mint-Hill in October.
Lieutenant, not to put you on the spot, I believe you had someone here on the story of someone who's been really impacted by juvenile diversion. She might be able to share that with after all, it's about people, right? These stories, and I believe she's got a very interesting story to tell. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
My name is Cara Evans. I'm a program manager at Diversion. And I did reach out to one of our former participants, and he actually is currently enrolled in Winston-Salem State, and he's in his 4th year, majoring in mass communications, and he's actually on the dean's list. So I speak to his mother on a regular basis. When he originally came to Diversion, he brought his younger sister with him, and she was able to get some information out of the Diversion program too. He graduated, and he ended up moving. His parents ended up moving to New York City. And the mother calls me, is there a program like this in New York? Because I love the program so much. So she's given positive things about the Diversion program, and he's doing well. He keeps in touch. He actually wanted to come, but he has class today, and he was hoping to FaceTime, but we didn't think that would work. So we are keeping in contact with some of our former participants who are doing very well.
We appreciate it. The stories are just tremendous, and I'm sure that's just one of many stories just like that. Anyone who needs additional information, statistics, numbers, stories concerning juvenile youth diversion, please email me and I'll get you exactly what it is you need. But what we want to do now is we want to open up the floor. Questions for Lieutenant Ratliff, questions for Captain Brisbane. I also see we have Chief Putney here this morning for anything else that's moving. So I'm going to let.
Morning. So, what questions might you have?
Why is the violence getting worse?
Very good question. Very good question. I wish I could tell you specifically and simply why that is. Ultimately, I think there are a lot of factors, one of which is, as the captain spoke to, we have people who are involved in relationships, acquaintances. They let their emotions get the best of them, and they're resolving minor issues with violence. Sometimes gun violence, as you heard, sometimes knives, and sometimes even physical force. The trend is we keep seeing some of these small conflicts escalate. What we're trying to do about it is we've touched on it. We're in the hot spots across the city. We're seizing guns. We're trying to take those illegal guns off the street. We're focusing on those repeat offenders. We're also looking at some of the suspects who are escalating their violence. If I go from pointing a gun at you to shooting at a house to shooting at a car, it's not illogical that you might shoot a person. Any of those incidents could lead to death. So we're focusing on those people too before they commit a homicide, trying to break that cycle. That's the work that we do. I wish I could tell you specifically what drives a rise and why it would happen to Tommy. That is beyond what we have the capacity to explain because it's so personal. What you heard a lot about in personal stories, every family, we talk about numbers, every family, all 22 families have been changed indefinitely. In the work of diversion, what we're trying to do is be proactive so we can keep down the road this level of and this lack of conflict resolution that leads to violence from occurring in the first place. That's our mission.
Captain Brisbane mentioned that the numbers are very different from the past few years. And thank you for kind of outlining the types of cases that you've been investigating. Are those different qualitatively from past years? I mean, are there more of these confrontations? And do you have any sense of why, there are more guns available?
That is precisely the issue, is the number of them has increased. The breakdown over the years is pretty much the same. We know, for the most part, the community at large is not at risk. We know that there are acquaintances and behaviors that contribute to it. But what we're seeing now is just more instances of people resorting to violence. And we think a lower level of conflict resolution would be much more appropriate.
Hey, Chief.
Yes.
Any of the numbers like Captain Brisbane mentioned, anything jump out at you as a veteran officer? Any of the data there jump out?
Yes, ma'am. Most troubling to me is we see demographically people who are most at risk. What we see is people of color in particular are most at risk. What we see too is our issue in this environment is trying to police in a way that allows us, people talk about over-policing. We're always on guard for that, but we have to be sensitive to the most vulnerable. We have to be where our victims are most likely to be victimized. And that sometimes, as I said before, many times puts our officers on a collision course. But what's most troubling to me is that our most vulnerable continue to, year after year, more and more.
17-year-old, that young man killed last week.
1 second, sir. Yes.
With the two killings by CMPD officers included in that number of 22 homicides. And as you see the increase of violence throughout the city, is it equitable amongst geographic regions, or are there specific areas that you're seeing this overall increase of violence versus other geographic areas?
The classification of the shooting,
The officer involved incidents are not in there.
right, they would not be in that broad category. Right. The second part of your question is geographically. That's what I touched on when Colleen asked the question. Our issue is when you map the violence, it does break down specific to geographical areas of town, and then we have to deploy resources accordingly. Again, our goal is prevention. Our mission is to prevent that next crime. So we're trying to get out of these areas, build relationships, and divert a lot of our people from, we think, a sequence of events that lead to tragic consequences like we're talking about back there today.
Chief, I know you all mentioned 15 of them have been cleared, you've had arrests. What are some of the challenges you all are facing in the other 7 and across the board in trying to solve some of these?
Well, actually, we've gone from, 50% to up to about 3/4 of them that we're able to solve now. So we're making progress. It takes time. The issue that we're facing is being able to get the information in a timely fashion to bring closure to families. I don't even talk about case clearance. I talk about closure because it's a human element that we forget when we talk specific to statistics. There's more than that. So what we see is a need to continue to build that trust so that we get that information. The other thing that we need, though, is, again, we need to continue to educate around what we do with diversion, how to keep your emotions in check, how to resolve minor issues without resorting to violence. That's a part of our strategy as well.
Chief, are you getting any cooperation in the Tyshawn Brown case from last week, the young man who was found on the elementary school playground? I talked to their family. They believe that the Instagram video that he posted in the minutes or hours before he died could have contained some vital information. Are you finding clues? Are you finding information? Are you finding people who are willing to help with this case?
We are seeking some leads that we have. I can't get too far into detail. I can't jeopardize the case, obviously. I can tell you the progress is slow, much slower than we would like.
Any connection between any of these cases? I know you're saying there are disagreements. Is there overlap there, disagreements?
Very few that we see are really connected. Now, what we will see is there has been evidence of violence from some of our latest victims that they were suspects before in violent crimes. So what we do see is there's a connection to violence, but not necessarily connected cases where people are committing more than one of the homicides at a time. A couple more.
Chief, people always talk about.
Yes.
Sorry, just
She had her hand
Yeah,
up. So
sorry.
we'll go ahead with you. Yes.
yeah, real quick. So you mentioned as far as addressing the increase in violence, do you believe that, I guess, twofold? Number one, that it could have to do with warmer weather, because typically we see an uptick in violence in the summer months. Second,
Generally that's the case, but not always. I think right now we've seen warm weather, but this level of violence is, I think, has more to do with people not resolving issues appropriately than the weather.
yeah, and the second sort of fold of that question was the CDC is addressing or looking at the increase in violence, calling it a public health issue. Do you see this as not only a police issue, an interpersonal issue, but also a health issue that has to be addressed on a health level?
I would start at the latter. I think it is a public health issue first and foremost. Then it's an interpersonal issue, and then we come at the tail end trying to bring closure. So I agree with all those, and yes, I say all of those are factors. I think the sequence is what I would probably differ with.
Kind of piggybacking on the warm weather question, is there anything that you're going to be doing differently or more aggressively in the next coming months to try to get a handle on some of these numbers in anticipation of what could happen this summer?
Much more assertively, what we're going to do is continue to analyze those who have escalated their violence in the past, trying to prevent some of these tragic outcomes. That's going to be our strategy, especially as the warm weather hits in the next couple of months. Yes, sir.
Just sorry if this is a redundant question. I know we have an increase in homicides, but are we seeing an increase in overall calls for service? Is there survival, for instance, acts of violence that people are surviving more than in past years as well?
That's a very good question. What we're seeing actually is more fatalities, more fatal outcomes. Not necessarily more instances, What we've seen in the past is we have a great healthcare system here, and a lot of people are surviving shootings. And as tragic as the shooting is, it's great that you have the survival. And what we're seeing now is a lot more tragic outcomes.
We get one more.
All right, one more.
Skip, did you have something?
I can't count, I
Last
said
one.
2 more, and this will be 4, but that's okay. Yes, sir.
Chief, there's so many things you want to try to do to stem this tide, but how do you get into a community and tell people who may have grievances with another member of that community
Yes.
to calm down?
Yes, yes. What I'll tell you is this, we can do all we can, but that is beyond our capacity, beyond our control. What we want to do, and that's why we're talking to you today, is get the message out that there are resources to help. If you have anger management issues, or you know somebody in your family that does, get them the help they need prior to violence escalating. Again, when you see what drives a lot of the homicides, it is a minor conflict. It's, I'm mad at you for some reason. And instead of talking it out, working through it logically and reasonably, we let emotion carry the day, and people resort to violence. All right, thank you so much.
Appreciate you. Just a couple of little housekeeping things. I think we'd all be remiss if we didn't thank Scott Grossman over here from Time 104.
Spectrum.
Spectrum. You guys are calling yourselves this week.
Try got a new co-anchor again.
Yeah. Well, because of Scott and his foresight and his insight, he had made some comments a couple of weeks back as we started embarking on this little journey of ours about how we could really dress things up considerably in the way of optics by getting some additional studio lighting in here. That's underway, and just to dovetail off that a little bit, we'll also have malt box installed, hopefully by the end of April, to assist you guys with your audio needs. So wanted to let you know that we were meant business when we said that you guys are important parts of this wheel in driving how we're going to go about doing these type of Wednesday things. So Scott, thank you. And thank you everyone else. We appreciate you guys turning out.
Car's correct spelling for her name?
Oh, yeah, the spelling.
Yeah, the
Spelling
lady.
for the different people.
C-A-R-A, Cara, Evans
K-A-R-I.
Patterson.
C or K?
It's a C.
Okay, and her last name again?
Evans Patterson, it's hyphenated.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
There you go, Scott.
That was our first attendance at the weekly CMPD press conference held at police headquarters.